Okay, this video is our first video of Unit 5, and it is all about ratios, rates, and unit rates, which is the first topic we're going to cover in Unit 5, which is all about proportional reasoning. So here, as always, is some of your vocabulary you need to know. There's actually a lot of new vocabulary we need to just make sure we understand as we go through this unit, and so a lot of it will be clarified throughout this video, like ratio, rate, unit rate. We're going to talk about those, but just make sure that as we go through, you're understanding what these are and feeling comfortable about that. One that I want to point out is rational numbers. We already know what those are. We learned about those in a previous unit, but notice how the word ratio is actually in the word rational. And so hopefully that will make some more sense to you also. These last two are just kind of phrases that point out, we really just want you to understand that ratios, unit rates, and rates just use a lot of division and multiplication in order to compare two quantities or numbers. So first we're going to start talking about ratios, and really ratios are just ways that we can compare two quantities, or like I said, quantity just really means amounts or values of something. So we can represent ratios in three different ways. The first is using words. The second is with a colon, which is these two dots, and then as a fraction, which can be simplified sometimes. So if I wanted to use words to describe, boys to girls, and I said that there were 5 boys compared to every 3 girls in a class. So for every 5 boys, there are 3 girls. In order to also do that with a colon, I would just replace the word to with that colon, and it would be the same way. And then as a fraction, the first number is the numerator, the second number is the denominator. So we're going to get used to looking at this, and these are the 3 ways we can represent ratios. So let's look at the next slide. Has just an example or a couple examples. So if I wanted to write ratios, let's say comparing this picture, different items in the picture. If I wanted to make a ratio of red to green circles or dots, I would count up all the red ones, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So 7 first, okay? So I guess I should do words first. 7, 2, green are 1, 2, 3, 4. So I have 7 red compared to 4 green ones. As a colon or with a colon, I would write it the same way, except I'm replacing the word to. So it's going to have a colon. And as a fraction, 7 is my numerator, 4 is my denominator. And so if you notice, red was the first word. This is the first quantity that I want to compare to the second. So 7, because that's the red quantity, is going first or in the numerator, and then 4 is going second. So if we look at the next example, I have stars to dots. So there are 1, 2, 3, 4 stars. Okay, that's going first. And I'm comparing that to all the dots. Well, I wasn't very specific, so I'm just going to include all of them, whether they're red or green. So there should be, 11. So 4 to 11, that would be stars, 4 to 11 dots. I can also use the colon, so 4 to 11, and I can also use a fraction, 4 to 11, like that. If we think about green to the total, well, there are 4 green, and I'm comparing that to the total. Well, total is going to include everything. How many shapes are in this picture? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. So 4 to 15. I can also do 4 to 15 with a colon, and then I can also do 15. Or I can do 4 to 15 as a fraction. So again, just notice the ordering. Green was first, so the green quantity is 4. That's going first, and then representing it in different ways. So we have different reasons why we would maybe want to use words versus a fraction versus a colon, and so we're going to just practice doing it multiple ways for now, and then that way you'll know all of them and be able to do whichever the situation calls for. So now we're going to talk about rates. And so ratios just compare two quantities. That's it. And then rates are basically comparing two different things, but they often have two different units. So examples of that would be where I have like miles and hours. So I can go 120 miles in 3 hours, or I can spend $6 on 4 cookies. So if you notice, there's different units or things going on. I'm not just comparing like red dots and green dots, or stars and dots. Like it has more of a meaning. And so it's going to be really important for you as you work with these ratios, rates, unit rates, whatever, that you start using units a lot more often, because it'll just give more clarification and it's just more specific. We can understand, it gives more meaning to whatever you're doing. So rates are just going to include different units. So that's how you can remember the difference between rates and ratios. And then unit rates are special kinds of rates. So notice how my rates here, it's just 120 miles in 3 hours, $6 for 4 cookies. I can just have multiple things going on. With unit rates, I want to know what is the rate of something for just one of something else. So it describes, usually we use this word per, which describes a unit rate. So if I just talk about miles per hour, just in 1 hour, how many miles can I go? How much am I paying for just one item? Not 4 cookies. I would want to know, how much am I paying for just 1 cookie? How many miles can I go in just 1 hour? How many heartbeats do I have in just 1 minute? So that is the difference between a unit rate and a rate. We're just kind of figuring out how much is it for just 1 unit of something. So when we set it up, oftentimes we're probably going to use a fraction, honestly, to represent a unit rate. And so if we're looking at the first example, miles per hour, well, if I'm setting it up, the first quantity is miles, so that's going in the numerator. And then per, let's imagine as this fraction bar right here. It's saying miles per hour, miles divided by hours. Hour is going in the denominator. And so remember, this fraction bar means divide. And so if we look at this example, we would find a unit rate by using division. We would just divide whatever rate they gave us and figure out how much is it for just one of those things. So if I have 120 miles in 3 hours, well, I would divide 120 by 3. When I do that, I end up getting 40. So basically this example, if I can go 120 miles in 3 hours, that means that I'm pretty much going 40 miles per hour, 40 miles in 1 hour. I'm going to just shorthand it here, per hour. So I'm figuring out, the reason it's a unit rate is because I'm figuring out for just 1 hour, how many miles can I go? So some examples of this might be if I get 5 inches of rain in 10 hours in my backyard, how many inches of rain would that be per hour? I want to just know each hour how many inches of rain are going to fall. So I could divide. If I'm doing inches of rain per hour, I would divide the 5 inches of rain by 10 hours. So think about that. If I divide 5 by 10, I'm basically doing this, 5/10. Remember earlier I said you can simplify these ratios and unit rates. 5 divided by 10 is really 1/2, right? I can simplify this if you want to do it this way. You can think about this as 1/2. So really, I'm getting 1 inch of rain every 2 hours, or really I'm getting, if I simplify this down even more, I'm getting 1/2 of an inch of rain in 1 hour per hour. There we go. Okay, if I am spending $18 for a package of 9 cookies, let's say, well, what is the cost for just one of those cookies? What am I paying? This is actually really helpful when you're grocery shopping. You guys don't probably have to really do grocery shopping that much by yourself at all, but you might go with your parents and start noticing the unit cost. That's basically a unit rate. How much are you paying for just one item in whatever you're buying? So I would divide 18 by 9. 18 is the cost, numerator, per cookie. Cookies in the denominator. So that's going to be 2. I'm spending $2 per cookie. That's what that means. Okay. So, we have some other examples, so feel free to try those on your own if you want. If there's 300 students for 15 teachers, how many students per teacher would that be? The recap of this is just make sure you can answer these questions, write down any questions that you still have to class, and we will clarify and practice more.